News Radio 840 WHAS. Good Sunday morning. Bob Sokoler, the Louisville Real Estate Show. We're here with you till the top of the hour. Got a lot of questions and hopefully some answers for everybody who is writing us emails because we're doing our Zoom show. With us today, Brad Lawler. He is owner of the Home Team Inspection Service. They come in as a team. They're ranked number one Home Team Inspection Service 7, soon to be 8 years in a row, we hope. And you can reach Brad and his team 844-411-TEAM. Also here, Lee Harris, who's legal counsel over at Limestone Title and Escrow. And you can reach Lee directly, really, on her cell phone, whether you're a consumer or an agent, because she helps a lot of us as agents. 649-7964 is her direct cell phone number. My son Greg is out in Vegas attending the Inman Convention. That's a trade convention for real estate. I'm hoping he has a chance to call in the next half hour or so. So let's start right off the top. And this question goes actually out to both Brad and to Lee. Barney wrote in. He says, my old tenants, he had a rental. My old tenants poured concrete down the drains with no possible fix. It also got into the sewer system, and I have to pay out to the city for damaging the infrastructure. So we'll start with Brad. Certainly angry tenant. This is why a lot of people don't get into rentals. But is there anything in your mind as an inspector and knowing the ins and outs of a home that somebody like this poor guy can do to repair what's been done by a renter?
You know, I would definitely start with one of the plumbers in town that has the ability to do a main sewer line clean out. There may be some, not the scope. No, not the scope. No. Yeah. Well, I don't know the way that the water flows through those pipes. It's not going to completely coat it. It's just going to, fill up the bottom of it. It just depends on how far it goes. What I would do, I wouldn't scope it. What I would do is just see whether or not the chain mechanism can spin it out. But yeah, other than that, I mean, that's going to be an expensive fix to if you got to dig it out. But it just depends on how much concrete they flush through the system and how far in the main lines, the laterals that it went.
So that gets to a retaliation mode for a lot of people. How do you get back at them? Lee, let's bring you in as an attorney. If you were renting that house or you were the owner of the house and the renter did it to you, what would you do?
Well, unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do out of the civil arena. It really sounds like, of course, it sounds to everybody like that's criminal. You vandalize someone's property. But the way the courts look at it around here is, well, that's a contract between the two of you. So you have the right to, of course, get all of it fixed, figure out how much it is. If it's over $2,500, you can go to district court. If it's under $2,500, you go to small claims court. That's pretty easy. The small claims court is in and out, quick and dirty.
Yeah.
Anything above $5,000 goes to circuit court, and that's getting into a more serious type of case, and that is going to get into attorney's fees and discovery and that kind of thing. But he certainly do under the landlord-tenant law, and I'm sure under his lease, any damages that the tenant causes to the property above and beyond the security deposit, he's entitled to recoup that.
I suspect that's if you can get hold of find the renter.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's throwing good money after bad. If you have someone who doesn't have any money, then you can win all day long. But if you can't collect, now the one good thing is if you get a judgment against someone, you might not get paid today, but if they go to buy, judgment lien lasts for 15 years. If they go to buy a house 10 years from now and your judgment lien is in their record, then every once in a while, a person will get a call from someone who's doing a closing and say, hey, this guy owes you $10,000 plus interest. So, he has to pay you before he can get cleared to buy a house.
Yeah, you hope that would happen. All right. Yeah. We're going to move on. You'll think we're staying with a theme here, but it's only this next question and it just ties in. For you, Brad, George's sister has a backup of a sewer. You see the thing. MSD installed a backflow filter valve. Yeah, it had to be manually turned to prevent backups. Mm-hmm. The problem is George's sister has to be home to turn it on. Now, we talked about this fairly recently on a recent show, but the question that George says he insists he has heard, because he heard our show when we talked about this, he insists that there's some sort of automatic remote control that allows his sister to fire this thing to turn off the backup flow or turn on the backup flow? Anything that you've heard on this at all?
Yeah, no, I think that there we may be looking at a different type of valve that can be automated, or he was hearing us talk about maybe a backup sump pump or something. But the problem with those systems that are installed by MSD in those areas of the city that have, that are flood prone is that the backflow preventer is an automatic thing. All it is a flapper. It's kind of like in your toilet, but it's in the sewer line. So when water flows out of a toilet into the sewer line, it flows through that valve. It opens that little flapper up. But when the water is backing up from outside the house or backing up through the drains because of excessive rainfall, it pushes against that rubber flapper, and then so it seals it up so that the water can't enter back into the water system in the house. But the valve that has to be activated, it's a big heavy PVC big plastic valve, and that you have to use a key like you would be cutting off your water to your house outside. And it's a heavy duty valve. They're only activated. I mean, I don't live in one of those areas, don't have the system in my house, but my understanding is you would only activate it if you've got flooding in the area. MSD would have given her very specific instructions on when to activate that, but it's not like every time it rains that you have to activate that valve. I think what I would do is have them call MSD again and just confirm when that valve has to be activated, because I don't think it's very frequently, and I don't know of any automatic system where you can punch a button and it turns the valve, because that's almost like an industrial kind of valve. And I don't know of anything that you could do it while you are away from the house.
Hopefully, George, that helps you. By the way, if you're thinking about selling your home, or even if you're contemplating maybe next year, you'd be shocked at the amount of equity that most homeowners have in their homes right now. They have no clue how much. And if you're thinking you want to buy, but you don't want to sell before you're able to buy your next home, we've got you covered. We have 5 ways, and many of them help to guarantee you to find your next home before you have to close on your existing home. If you want that, or just a free consultation, talk about the process, go to bobsellmyhome.com or call me at 376-5483. We go back over to Lee with this question. Mark writes in. He says, I'm a California businessman who listens to us on iHeartRadio. Hi there, Mark. And who owns 2 lots in Louisville. And Mark says today, which was a little earlier this week, he realized that the lots have been listed for sale 40 days ago without his knowledge. He contacted the listing agent. The listing agent told him that his client is a land firm and has a contract with the owner of record. Then he explained, Mark did, that he says, I'm the owner, and I haven't authorized anyone like this. And he went on, and the agent removed the listing. He says, I've been able to get the name and phone numbers of the guy who committed this supposed fraud. So he's wondering, Lee, what does he do? Does he go to the police? Should he pursue legal action against this party or any parties?
Yes, I think that's what they need to do is investigate whether or not someone actually sold this and didn't own it, or if they actually got it on some kind of a land trust and thought they owned it. But somewhere along the line, there has to be a fraudster there, because obviously if the actual title owner in the chain of title hasn't signed anything, then somebody is stepping in and trying to sell it from under him. So yeah, I think the police can investigate that as a fraud case.
Do you see a lot of this happening, Lee, throughout our area?
Not throughout our area, but I hear stories about that kind of thing from time to time, where someone just gets an idea in their head that, hey, here's a way I could make some good money on, eat on the cheap and then disappear, and they'll do things like that, or transfer title to someone else's house, and then the buyers show up and they're like, oh, well, we live here, we didn't sell the house to you. So yeah, there's certain schemes out there.
We constantly are getting calls from people who are hearing or seeing on one of the websites that a house that we have listed is for rent, and it's not. And in fact, Wave 3 did an interview, a story about this last year with me. So it happens across the city and across the country. So be careful if you're thinking about renting and you find a house. Make sure you got to call, do a little more than just calling whoever's got the sign advertised to make sure it's actually legitimately being rented, because you could end up losing money. Let's see. Brad Cameron just read an article in Reader's Digest about home inspectors. She is worried about something called a drive-by inspector who does not thoroughly walk through the house and thoroughly review things like an attic, crawl space. And so Cameron is wondering what's the best way to find a good home inspector.
All right. So this is a great question that Cameron asks, because you really have to know what you're getting. So the first thing I'm going to advise anyone is talk to your friends, talk to your family members, find out who's inspected properties for them already. Okay. Those are good referrals. The second thing is you want to make sure you know what the home inspector's report looks like. And if they don't know, if they can't get a copy of an inspection report, if they can't see a sample, then run away from the inspector. The third thing you need to make sure of is you understand what the home inspector standards of practice are that they follow. In the state of Kentucky and the states of Indiana, we follow, a designated standard of practice that most home inspectors, all home inspectors are supposed to follow. The problem is there are a few out there that, as you say, do they drive-by inspection, and really what they do is they use a disclaimer and they just say, didn't inspect this area, didn't inspect this area. They give the reason why. They may just use something as simple as not accessible. So it really, you got to check the reviews. You got to find people that, have done a good job for other people before you sign up. And then the last thing you do is make sure that you look at their agreement, make sure you understand what the agreement is that you're signing. And for the bonus question is, make sure you can get a hold of the inspector, because if you're calling the inspector and they don't answer their phone, chances are they're busy. They may be in an attic, they may be in a crawl space, but if you need a question answered, you got to be able to get a hold of them. So, for home team, we've got an office staff, so it's easy to get a hold of us because we're answering our phones Monday through Saturday. So you got to make sure you can communicate with that inspector along the way, because there's a time sensitivity to the entire real estate transaction. Things have to move quickly. You got to get it scheduled. You got to get the report back, get the repair request list, over to the sellers. All that has to happen very quickly. So, if you find out you've got an inspector that does a drive-by inspection, you get a substandard inspection report, maybe a few days later, you may be out of time and not able to fix that, within the process. So find somebody that you can verify knows what they're doing out there.
Yeah, as agents, buyers, and sellers, we're on timelines, not possible times, but these are hard and fast deadlines that we need be able to respond. We're taking a break. Incidentally, if by chance you haven't done this by now, but you'd like to sign up for our bi-monthly newsletter, every 2 weeks we have a new topic. Right now is the topic is home retirement and asset, and how to help maximize that. If you want to sign up free of charge, no obligation, a lot of tips in there. Oh, you can go to welovelouisville.com. That's welovelouisville.com. As we go to the break, we're thanking for being here with us so far. They'll be here till the top of the hour. Lee Harris, Legal Counsel, Limestone Title and Escrow at 649-7964. Brad Lawler, owner at Home Team Inspection Service. And you can reach Brad and his team at 844-411-TEAM. You can reach me, Bob Sokoler, anytime on my cell phone, 376-5483. And we're back in a moment on News Radio 840 WHAS. News Radio 840 WHAS, Bob Sokoler, the Louisville Real Estate Show, here with you till the top of the hour. Lee Harris, Legal Counsel, Limestone Title and Escrow, continues with us, 649-7964. Brad Lawler, owner of Home Team Inspection Service, 844-411-TEAM. You can reach me to help you. No cost, no obligation. Come out and we can talk about the process of getting your home on the market and sold. And you can reach me at 376-5483. And my thanks to Barbara Corcoran, who is a mentor. Greg and I are going to go up to see Barbara at the end of this month for a meeting and some more commercials. So that's always
nice. Greg's just going everywhere, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in Vegas right now for this Inman conference, so he's busy flying around.
Yeah.
All right, so Lee, we're seeing a common problem. Brad, be glad you're not having this one. A common problem developing among moving companies here in Louisville. A letter we received from Liz. She says, what can she do with the moving company that promised to have her out of her house on a specified day and time and ended up not having enough people to move her out on time? And this, of course, is for buyers and sellers. And by the way, this is not just an isolated case. We're hearing more and more about this. So the first question is, what are the rules for moving out of a house based on a contract, Lee?
Well, typically the contract is going to say in the paragraph entitled possession, it's typically going to say possession date of deed, which means that at the closing you hand the keys over and your house is broom clean, and the buyers can move right in after closing if they want to. You can also have, of course, something that is called a post-occupancy agreement, where the seller stays on after closing, even though the title now belongs to the buyer, but the seller stays on in order to, move out maybe, or they haven't found a new place, but that would be done by contract between buyer and seller. And usually there's some kind of payment, maybe a rent payment, or at least some kind of money on escrow for damages. So if it comes up at the last minute like that because of the movers, and of course it's not just movers, it's restaurants and stores. And I went to a store the other day, and they were closing at 3:30 because they didn't have anybody to work. So, it's just a common problem with the workforce. But if it came up at the last minute and they weren't going to be able to be out, then I would suggest signing a post-occupancy agreement, agreeing upon how much the seller is going to pay the buyer to stay there, and look at your contract with the mover, because if you have a signed contract with the mover, it may in fact give you some kind of damages if they don't get the job done by the time that you agreed to.
And that takes us to our next question, or part of this question. How do you ensure, as the seller or buyer, that the moving company lives up to the agreement of moving out at a specific time and day?
Yes. Again, I think don't just call somebody up and say, "Hey, come move me," and don't just text or email them. Get a company that has an actual contract. Look at the contract, read it, see what the terms are, see if it's satisfactory to you. If it's not, put in there that you want it done by 5 p.m. on August 3rd, or otherwise there's going to be damages, or, put what you want. It's probably a standard form contract, but it's your contract in this particular instance. So you can amend it as you see fit to make sure that you're complying with your contract with your buyer.
Yeah, this can be touchy, to say the least. And I will tell you that I don't want to broadcast the names of the two moving companies that we're tracking, but I will tell you, if you are concerned, you can call me, and I am more than happy to tell you the names of the moving companies that we're seeing having problems, because I suspect it's staffing. It can't be stupidity where they just forgot. I think it's a problem with staffing. And yes, we get that. We understand that from a standpoint of a business, but then you need to take action to prevent that from happening, because you're dealing with lives, contracts, and a lot of money that could end up coming back on you as the moving company, if so it happens. All right, let's move forward here. Mr. Lawler, Connie preparing to sell her home, and she knows, she wrote us, it's most likely going to be inspected by a buyer's inspector. By the way, I would say at least 95% of all homes that sell have an inspection done. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Well, you would hope so. Those have not been the recent numbers. We've got a lot of buyer's remorse because people are waiving the inspection. So
really, well, if it's one of our buyers,
well, it's not a Sokoler team.
No,
you're doing an inspection if you're.
You do not want to waive.
Yeah, no,
I mean you can waive asking for repairs.
Yes,
that's what we say to our clients, but do not waive an inspection, because the saving of $500 could end up costing you thousands of dollars down the road. Anyway, I get back to Connie's question. She asks in an email, what should the inspector, what can she do to make it easier for the inspector to inspect her home? Very nice, Connie.
Wow.
Should she leave a ladder out? Should she move boxes from the walls or things like that? So where would you go with that?
Wow, that is fantastic.
Yeah.
Brad, I'm sure you get that all the time.
I love this. Yeah, the best thing that a homeowner can do in preparing for the inspector showing up is to make sure that everything is accessible. The electrical panel is accessible. If there's a crawl space, that the crawl space is accessible. The attic is accessible. You should not need to leave a ladder. The inspector should come with their own equipment to get into those attic areas. But it's really all about access. Boxes piled up against walls just make us suspect. We're not going to move the boxes, but we're going to note the fact that there were boxes crammed up against the wall, which usually means they're attempting attempting to hide something, at least in the mind of the inspector and the buyer. So anything that they can do to declutter and give access is the thing that we need to know. The other thing is the house needs to have water turned on. It needs to have the electricity turned on. It needs to have the air conditioning and heating systems working when we get there. The hot water tank or the water heaters, we need to make sure those are working. You'd be amazed at how many houses, particularly houses that are being flipped or that have been vacant for a short period of time, that the power's cut off and the listing agents don't necessarily know it. And inspectors show up and there's no utilities on. Those have to be on in order to actually complete an inspection.
I'll add one more thing to the list for you on your behalf. If you have a fireplace that is covered up to prevent leaking of air, whether it's summer or winter, uncover it. Because an inspector I used to work with many, many years ago, John Thompson, he passed away a number of years ago, great guy, told me about the story where there was a covered up fireplace and he pulled the cover off and a whole bunch of birds came flying out at him, scared the bejeebers out of him.
Yeah. Well, better yet, we had an inspection here a few years ago that the entire inside of the top of the fireplace was sealed up with caulk and metal panels. And we pointed that out in the report. We pointed it out to the buyers, but they forgot about it. And about 4 months after they moved in, they lit a fire in an enclosed box, and they were upset that we didn't tell them. We went, no, here's the pictures, here's your report. Remember, we actually had this conversation. Well, it was actually one of their teenage kids who started the fire. The teenagers were not there, and guess mom and dad didn't tell them, hey, this is an inoperable fireplace.
Because you would think if you've written it up, it's the real estate agent's job to identify that is a problem. Yeah. Moving on, Lee. Jimmy lives in the Highlands, a nice area of our community, considering buying a home that has a detached garage, and in the space above the garage is an area that can be used to run a business. He sent this email in wondering, he says, if he could get into trouble by having a business up there, maybe not his, but maybe someone else advertise and get a business to run up there to get some income from somebody who wants to rent that spot out. So are there any restrictions for, I'm going to presume it's zoned residential,
right?
Much of Highland is.
Yeah, it's a zoning issue. And if it's not zoned for commercial, it's zoned strictly residential, then you can't do it. There are certain designations that allow certain businesses, for example, a hair salon or something like that. So the first thing to do is to figure out what the zoning is on the property. Contact planning and design. They're very good. They will answer your questions. They'll look up your property. They'll tell you everything you need to know about what it's zoned and what that allows for. And then if it doesn't allow for that, you can try to get a conditional use permit. You can try to get it rezoned so it's got a commercial capacity. But the first step before you buy is to find out what, if any, businesses can be run legally there now, because the planning and design situation can take a while and it can be expensive.
Which brings up a question I have for this one. I read this question. I said, well, gee, if I'm a real estate agent that's going to list a house and the seller wants me to promote the fact that a business can be run from up on top of the garage, it really, based on what you're telling me, they need to do their due diligence, or someone does, to make sure that it can, in fact, because otherwise we're putting my license on the line and technically, legally coming after the sellers. I suspect,
right. Yes, that's in particular areas of the city. Houses are now turning into businesses. For example, in St. Matthews, and it's very important for the seller, the listing agent, and the buyer and the buyer's agent to check that, because, for example, we had one case years ago where the buyers wanted to put a florist. They bought the house not to live in, but to have a florist there, and they get in there and they renovated it and made it into this florist, and boom, the zoning cops came down on them and said, nope. You can only live here in the house as a residence. So,
yeah, that's a problem. No kidding.
Yeah.
All right, we've got time for one more question. It goes to you, Brad. Vanessa has a bug problem. In her email, she writes about flies inside the house along with ants. She knows she's got to hire some type of exterminator, but she wonders, are all of them the same? Are there questions that she should ask the exterminator that would tell her whether they're the real deal or just a lot of hype?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I would do is when you're calling the call center, find out whether or not they answer the phone. The other thing is find out the technician that's coming out. Are they just looking at treating outside the house, which is what many of them do right now because it's easy and simple, rather than identifying really what the source of the problems is? Because a good pest inspector, a good pest technician is going to actually use a flashlight and find the source of those insect issues and be able to use spot chemicals in order to take care of those issues. Oftentimes it's water under a sink, or they found a food source somewhere and that's what they're feeding on. But if they're just spraying outside, so you really need to be comfortable with the technician kind of coming up with the treatment plan.
Do you find some exterminators will charge more for the same services?
Yes.
It is a problem. So you want to shop around?
Yeah, it
is there any place that you can go to get that information without having it skewed by one group or another?
No, the reviews are a source, but I would really, there's some good local exterminators. There's national folks. I don't use them myself, but there's some good local ones. But it's an interesting business. But yeah, check reviews, and I would just call them and the people that you talk to, because there's some you'll get them on the phone. And you'll feel very comfortable that they are competent in what they're doing pretty quickly. Others, you're just going to get into a call center that do nothing other than schedule appointments.
Got it. If you want to see a copy of this radio show, you can go to LouisvilleAnswers.com. It'll take you to our YouTube channel where you can watch the video version of this radio show. My thanks to Brad Lawler, owner of Home Team Inspection Service. They come in as a team. You can reach them at 844-411-TEAM. Also, Lee Harris, legal counsel, Limestone Title and Escrow. And you can reach her on her cell phone, 649-7964. And if you're thinking of selling, you can reach out to me, come out free, no obligation consultation. We just talk about what the process is, or you can call me. We'll talk on the phone or do a Zoom call. You can reach me at 376-5483. We're out of time. See you next Sunday on News Radio 840 WHAS.